So we'll get this special meeting, an executive session of the Silver Falls School District to order. Debbie, can you note attendance? Thank you. We need to take a motion to add an agenda item for telephone reference check training regarding applicants and candidates.
I move to add to the agenda that we talk about telephone reference check training.
Okay. Heard a motion. Anybody with a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So we moved and seconded that we add telephone reference check training to the agenda. I have no concerns. Anybody with any concerns? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. And at this point, we're going to adjourn to executive session under ORS 1926602A to consider the employment of a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent regarding selecting candidates to interview and develop an interview schedule, as well as ORS 1926602F to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection regarding a sick leave bank request. We are returning to regular open session. We have one action item on the table to consider the sick leave bank request of somebody in the district.
I move that we approve the sick leave bank request for Scott Guptill for the amount of 25 days.
Okay.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, there are 3 discussion items. We added one, the telephone reference check training. That's the first one. We can start there.
Okay, so I'm handing out a sample of questions for telephone reference checks. There are 2 questions highlighted at the bottom. We highly, highly recommend you keep those. And so numbers 1 through 14, I'd like you to circle 5 to 6 questions between 1 and 14 that you individually want as telephone reference questions. And if you can do that, sure. If you can do that in the next few minutes, I can whittle it all down for you and give you a list tonight.
How many?
5 to 6.
5.
Okay. No more than.
Are we keeping 15 and 16 as a standard? Or
Yes,
we
yeah,
have
only
the
look
standard
at 1
if they
through
don't have-
14. Y'all know?
I'm done.
Thank you.
Okay, just need 1 second to go through all this.
I know.
Good thing you have to unwrap them, it slows you down.
One at a time.
You want me to bring my bowl of M&Ms in?
Where is it?
It'd be great for about 10 minutes. I'd have a stomach ache and regret it.
I regret the number of pieces of pizza I had earlier today.
Oh.
I hear it's supposed to be 90 tomorrow.
Oh, really?
I was really getting used to the.
Is it real cool? I didn't think it was supposed to be that warm yet.
Well, this is what my daughter tells me today and or tomorrow and the next day. 90.
I'm going to Spokane for this trip.
Be warmer.
It's normally, because it's always at the end of July. And it has been in the low hundreds or high 90s every time I've ever done it. It's supposed to be in the 80s with one day in the 90s. And I'm thinking, that's not
nice.
bad.
Okay.
Lucked out.
Okay.
You lucked out.
Yeah, that's much better. Because we almost always stay in some dorm rooms that don't have air conditioning.
Oh.
So, yeah,
Bring your fan.
we do. We bring a fan. A portable fan.
Which college? What is it?
Gonzaga.
Gonzaga.
Oh, my son goes there.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great.
He stayed in Lincoln Hall. No air conditioning.
Right. Well, most of the school year, it isn't quite so important.
No, that's
but,
exactly right. It's a
in the
little
summer.
chilly.
Yeah.
Well, and they let out early too.
Yeah.
We've identified 5 questions that the majority liked. Does that sound like enough questions? 5 plus the 2 at the end would leave you 7 questions. All right,
I think that
if you
sounds
could
great.
make a copy of that for every board member. Thank you.
Great.
Was there pretty good consensus?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I can read them off while she's making photocopies.
Perfect.
So we've got, how does the candidate handle herself in pressure situations? How would you describe the leadership and managerial skills of the candidate? Is she visible to the students, staff, and community? At what kind of school and community events would you typically expect to see the candidate? Were there events that you felt he or she should have attended but did not? How would you assess the feelings of the students, staff, and the community about the candidate? Does the candidate practice a proper mixture of educational theory and practical administration? Does that sound good? Okay. So I have to apologize because I printed off the instructions for the references and then I guess I left them at the office because they're not in my file. I will email them to you, to all of you, and then I'll go through them just verbally right now. So as mentioned before, these telephone reference checks are really your only opportunity to do a decent background check on each candidate. So our recommendation is that you talk to a minimum of 5 references. Start with their letters of reference, and if you don't have additional references, let me know because I will contact the candidate and get them for you as soon as possible. One other thing that we ask you to do is at the end of each phone call, with every person that you talk to, you ask them if there's anyone else that they think you should talk to, or anyone they can recommend you speak to, and get their name and phone number. If they mention people who you already have on your list or who have already been referred to you, say, oh, you know what, I actually already have them on my list, is there anyone else? And you kind of just keep doing that until you find someone. If you never do, thank them very much for their time and go to the next one. I would say if you've talked to 10 people, that's a decent amount and you can probably move on from there. Are there any questions?
So did you said 5 references minimum, but if they've given us 10, are we required to call all 10? Is that? or-
I mean, you're not
I don't
really
know how we pick.
required to do anything,
Right.
but I would recommend that you
That
reach
you-
out because again, you're not necessarily likely to to speak
Right.
all those people.
Okay.
And the more people you reach out to, the higher percentage of people you'll actually get call you back.
Okay.
Everyone's busy this time of year. Not everyone is at the school or whatnot, so people may not get to your voicemail in time, especially because it's Wednesday. You're going to start these hopefully tomorrow and have them done by Monday. So what I will do is I will reach out to each of the candidates that have been identified for interviews, and I will let them know that if they agree to it, that board members will begin telephone reference checks. Once I get that say-so from them, I will let you know that you're
Okay.
safe to proceed. And I will also speak to the 6th candidate, and if they choose to have an interview, I will relay that as well. I will refer to them only as the 6th candidate and assume that you know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
All right, any other questions about telephone reference checks? And again, I will send that document that outlines the instructions essentially to you via email. I apologize that I didn't grab it.
So in terms of recording our ideas, can we use electronic means to record our ideas? Is that okay, or is paper better in this situation?
Do you mean typing or do you
Yeah.
mean voice notes? I would say sure. I would then print it when you're done and stick it with your material so that we can archive it.
Okay,
Will that work?
that's fine. I might have to send it to Debbie to print, but yeah. And beyond that, these pieces of paper that we've already generated,
Yep.
should we?
Hang on to all of them.
Okay, until the very end.
You'll submit it all to me, and then we will essentially seal it at one point, and then it'll come back to the district office to be archived for, I believe it is a minimum of 3 years.
Okay,
I'll keep the jump drives though.
and we'll give those back on when we're done.
When we're done.
Mhm. And so again, if you don't have enough references, let me know, and I will get them for you.
If, let's say, we call 4 references and get no callbacks, and there's 6 listed, I mean, at some point, are we trying to generate more leads with you still, even in those scenarios? I mean, people can be
Yeah,
on
I mean,
vacation,
if
they
you
can
haven't
be...
talked to a single person, then I would say definitely let me know. I can reach out to the candidate and say, we've reached out to all of your references. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get a hold of anyone. Can you provide us with additional
Right.
ones?
It's summer, it could be hard to reach
Exactly.
people, is all I'm saying.
Yep, there's a lot of people on vacation right
Right.
now, for sure.
Okay,
Okay. We good there? All
I
right.
think so.
I did bring the interview questions.
All right,
And there are a lot because we have several different sections or categories, if you will. And we're gonna do a similar process, however, you've got a couple days to finish this one. And so I'd like each of you to go through each section, not necessarily right now, and identify 2 to 3 questions, 3 to 5 questions in each section. And if you don't come up with 3 or 5, that's okay. I would say, try to get at least 3 from each section that you would like to see an interview question on. And I will basically do the same process where we'll match them up and the majority ones I'll report back to you. But we're gonna do this via email. So I'm gonna resend this form to everyone, probably in the morning, with specific instructions of how to report back your choices.
Okay.
And do not hit reply all, because the email will go to the whole board. So you'll just reply directly to me what your choices are. And I need these by Friday at 5 p.m. Because what I'm gonna do is flush it all out, come up with a list of interview questions, bring that with me for the interviews. And I'll have paper copies for you where there's spaces to write notes on during the interviews. Okay, so if I don't get your email, I won't be able to take your feedback into consideration for these interview questions.
When will you send the email?
It might be later tonight or it'll be really
Okay,
early in the
good.
morning.
Okay, okay.
Ooh, I have a question back to the phone.
Sure.
Questions. Can we elaborate on any of those questions? Like if we ask a question and somebody responds in a way that makes us want to ask an additional question?
Yeah, if it's clarifying or a follow-up question, yes.
Okay, so only
Okay.
But you
clarifying.
can't take a question, ask it, and then specify something because of something about the candidate. Does that make sense? You can't alter the question for just one candidate.
Okay.
Okay. Got it.
Okay.
Even if it, I'm trying to think if they came back with something really specific. You can probe, or
Tell me
can't
more.
you?
You can
Like,
follow up.
Yeah, you can ask a
follow up
follow-up
and start
question.
digging into the details of
Yes,
what they're
but
talking
you
about.
can't start out with, instead of
Okay.
asking question number 2, you're gonna, switch several words, but only for one candidate.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's what you can't do.
Right.
Okay, so at the end of your review of all these interview questions, what we're hoping to get are about 20 questions
Okay.
for the hour-long interview. And at the top of the page, you can see we like to start with question A and end with question B, so that'll be added into all of the things that you choose. Now, if there's something that you really want asked and it's not in here for some reason, please feel free to share that as well.
Okay.
In your email back to me, and we'll figure out how to work it in. Okay? All right, any questions about all of that?
I will do my best to get you a response.
I
No promises.
appreciate your efforts.
What about, and maybe you're gonna get into it, the process of asking the questions during the interview? And do we go around, how does that work? And then when they ask questions back to us, we wouldn't want it to be a free-for-all, so is there a process that you would recommend for that?
So typically we determine how we're gonna ask the questions before the first interview, but we can do that here as well. Oftentimes, you'll just rotate. Some boards like to have just one person ask the questions, so it's up to you guys. In terms of the candidate asking questions of the board, often they'll ask a question and I see board members kind of look at each other and be like, oh, why don't you take that? Or someone just starts talking. But typically it ends up that anyone who wants to contribute to the answer has that opportunity.
Okay.
And some candidates will ask questions that they want to hear something from every board member.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
What do you do in your interviews? Are you usually the only person in on them, or do
No, we aren't usually. Often, well, it depends.
you like the rotating questions, or just one person?
We do rotations. I prefer rotating. Everybody stays more engaged, I think.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll touch on that again before the first interview. I like to meet at least 15 minutes before the start of the interviews to just kind of get settled, everyone knows what's happening. And now would be a great time to figure out what time we're gonna start interviews. And if both of those days work for the remaining board members. So the way I like to start this conversation is, what's the earliest that you can come on Monday?
For me, it'd be 2 or 3 o'clock. That'd be probably either one I could probably pull off.
Can anyone be here at 2 on Monday?
I'm saying I can probably.
Yeah, I could probably do
You
that.
do 2? Okay. I put my pens away, I'm not sure why. Come back out.
Wow, great.
So they start at 6.
Oh, 5 a.m.
Long
I
day.
do
Yeah,
better. I
do
do
you
better.
better in the
I
morning?
do way better in the morning. Yeah.
Alright, so
I'm open to
Monday,
anything.
We're gonna be here at 2 p.m.
We'll see how serious
Our
they are.
first interview would start at 2:15 p.m. How late do you wanna go? How many interviews do you wanna put in on Monday? Keeping in mind that after our last interview, the board gets to deliberate and identify their top candidate. So there's some extra time we gotta.
Could we target 4 Monday and 2 Tuesday?
Sounds
Yep,
reasonable.
that's what I was thinking. Yeah, 4
Yeah.
and 2.
4 and 2. And when do you want to discuss the background checks? And the internet searches, because what we can do, instead of starting the interviews at 2:15, maybe we
Starting
do.
at 3 or
Yeah.
3:15.
Is it better to do it before or after, did you say? Did you mention?
So-
Because it seems like you could get biased, but maybe that's a good thing.
Or you could hear things you want to know a little bit more about, and so maybe you on the spot change an interview question,
Right.
add an interview question. that's all appropriate because you have done background checks on all the candidates.
So you could swap up the questions in the process of the interview. You don't necessarily have to ask the candidate, every candidate, the same question.
Well, I think we
Or-
do.
We
is that-
prefer to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You could add a question specific to a candidate, again, because you have already done these reference checks.
Okay.
So this is the process that needs to really be very, very consistent between candidates, and then the other one,
The
process
telephone
has,
reference checks
Yes.
have to be, yes. And the interview questions, the ones that you guys all identify you want, I would still ask those of all of the candidates. But maybe we tailor one or two depending on what you hear.
I like that. I didn't realize that. So I was gonna point out that in my line of business, you always have tailored questions for every candidate, always, because you know something about them, right?
Yeah.
I was hoping you were gonna say that, but I wasn't expecting, so I'm glad that that's at least a
And
possibility.
it's different in the permanent search, that first round, everyone gets the exact same
I see.
questions no matter
Okay.
what. You can
Right.
ask follow-up questions based on what they say,
Mm-hmm.
but that's just the way it is. And then when you move on to the finalist section, then they are very tailored
Good,
questions.
okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, so if I'm hearing you all correctly, we're gonna do reference debrief starting at 2 p.m. And I know how to spell and write. And then starting at 3 p.m. we'll begin our interviews, so we'll go 3 to 4:15. And then we'll go 4:15 to 5:30. I have been known to make some odd mathematical errors, so please point
Okay.
them out as they come. So then 5:30 to 6:45, and then 6:45
Eight.
to 8.
8:00.
And that's
So-
actually really good.
Is it? Okay, are we
Yeah,
gonna
'cause they're rather-
break anywhere
9
for a
o'clock.
snack or eat or any,
Also
I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
valid
I'm thinking-
points.
we need to eat.
We
somewhere-
need to put in
About 5:30.
We're starting at 2, yeah.
We're all gonna
minimum
be
of 30 minutes.
shaking.
And then we just go to 8:30 and we don't
Yeah.
turn into pumpkins until about 9, so we should be okay.
Yeah, that's
Will a big bowl of chocolate just be fine? That's good, right?
Oh, we're just
Give me a bowl of M&Ms.
punchy, that last interview candidate.
Okay, so 5:30 to 6 is meal
Oh, there you go.
and break.
Do we wanna do something,
Do you wanna bring
Together.
food in?
like, do we
Like-
wanna order pizza or?
Yeah, I
I'll
think
bring-
it's
I'll take
probably
care of-
best
I'll bring food in,
Yeah.
like sometimes
I'll
we do.
bring
Okay,
food.
okay.
because it's so short. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
we're all trying to go somewhere that just
Yeah.
complicates things. Okay, so then 7:15 to 8:30. Done. Okay. We got 2 to do on Tuesday. What time do we want to start on Tuesday? And I would say a minimum of an hour of deliberation at the end. And that's
Right,
pretty tight.
yeah, no, I could
Sorry,
imagine
go
it would
much
take
longer than
possibly
that.
longer than that. I mean, I'm personally fine with the same idea, 2 or 3 o'clock is fine with me again, so
Okay.
I'll just repeat what I started with.
I'm good with that.
I should
Yeah, I
look at
think
this.
that's fine.
Actually say that.
Okay,
I'm flexible, so yeah.
great.
So
Sorry?
how long will we go on Tuesday?
Oh,
As long as it takes.
Uh-oh, what's up?
I have an eye exam until 2:30, and you gotta make, I'll try to reschedule it.
I'm teaching a class from 6 to 8 in Salem.
On Tuesday?
Okay,
That's I just realized that, sorry.
no.
Can we, you wanna go to 1? Can you start it? So wait, how much time do we need? 2 hours for the interviews? Well,
2.5.
2.5 hours,
And
minimum
then-
of an hour.
Minimum
so
of an
you'd
hour.
Say an hour and a half, so
And you need how much
4.
time?
4 hours.
that
I
right?
would probably
Yeah,
need
that was 3,
to leave.
yeah, 3:45, but 4,
I
yeah.
could leave
Right.
20
Yeah.
minutes before 6
So
and be okay.
Her limit's
I would say,
5:30.
yeah, I would say 5:30.
Okay.
So,
So 1:30?
Oh, thank you.
Or even just
What
1,
now?
so that we're sure? Because we don't wanna lose you before we
Right.
come to a
and
decision.
we'll start that first interview.
Okay, so
Apologize
it'll
to
be
my
one.
bosses later.
Okay.
We're gonna take a break. And if we want to bring food in, we can do that we can eat while we're deliberating because, there's no outside people here. So then from 4 to 5:30 is deliberation. But here's the problem. I mean, and it may not be a problem, but I just want everyone to be thinking of it. What happens at 5:30 when we don't have a top candidate identified? And I'm not saying that's gonna be the case. I'm just saying sometimes that happens. What do? Do we take a break and come back at
When Lori's done.
8:20, 8:30? Because we can, if that's,
Do you guys wanna do that?
Well, yeah.
I know
You wanted
Jonathan
to
is
start
like,
at
are you
noon?
kidding?
I mean, does that solve the problem to start at noon? And that gives us another hour?
I mean, it might, and
I don't
we
like
may
that.
be
It may or
done
may not.
at 4:30.
I don't like
You know, we may be
Right.
done
This
at
is not
5.
voting
I just
program.
want us to be having that conversation
This
and
is-
have some sort of contingency plan in place
Right.
if we're not there.
I can go either way, I'm flexible.
What if we start at noon, giving us more margin, and then if for some reason we get stuck, we'll just have to reconvene. But it's less likely if we give ourselves more time in the
That's
afternoon.
true. Is, so noon on Tuesday is what you're thinking?
Can everyone do
This, how does everyone feel?
Oh, how are you? Yeah.
Jonathan and Jennifer, can you
Feeling
look
pinch.
I
at?
can.
Eyebrows.
I'm on vacation, so it's no, for
Aw.
me, it's not really a big deal.
Okay, great.
Do you have conflicts?
Well, basically, yeah. I mean, I'll have to take time off work.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
1 o'clock, I can probably swing.
Mm-hmm.
But noon's a lot.
Noon, I mean, now you're really,
Yeah,
and now I'm taking vacation days, or
right.
half a day or whatever. So,
Do you want to give it a try and then know that we might have to come back at 8:30?
it'll be good motivation. Just saying.
It is.
I'm good either way.
Maybe we step away and we, go have some
Yeah.
food and
Everybody go
clear
have
our
dinner,
heads and
come
then.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think that's a bad thing.
It's
If
not.
we're, if we're
Might
having
not
such
be.
a hard decision,
Yeah.
stepping away is actually not a bad idea.
Stepping away and not
Okay.
discussing it at all.
Yes.
Right.
No.
Not just,
Okay, so that'll be our
Okay.
backup plan.
No.
I've been on a jury, that's hard.
Will be to come back.
Monday I'll have dinner, Tuesday I'll have like a light snack, how's that?
Yeah,
Just in
that
case
sounds
you
great.
go
Great.
eat somewhere and then you have to come back,
Yeah.
so.
I think
won't-
that's a great
I
idea.
won't get you guys too sleepy on Tuesday, I'll give you turkey and
Right.
chicken on Monday.
Oh, yeah, tryptophan.
Salad, yeah. Lots of carbs.
All right, any last questions?
I do, what if, what if
Wow.
we interview these 6 and we just kinda go, I don't like any of them.
Oh, please.
Oh.
That's not gonna happen, but
Yeah.
just, what is our
worst
What
case
happens when
scenario?
that happens?
Well, you have some options, but I don't know that you would necessarily say that any of them are great. You go back at it, try the whole thing over again.
Mhm.
You look at.
Can we look at the ones down the list that,
You can look at any
I
of
mean,
them.
like, can we just immediately pull 1 or 2 more off the list without going back into
Yes,
detailed? Okay,
I believe so.
Okay.
I think that's then the answer.
Yeah.
I don't
That's my
think-
answer, good.
I don't think we would ever.
I don't
come
think
back
that's gonna
to the
happen, I
process.
just wanna, you
Yeah,
don't wanna,
Good question.
It is-
you don't wanna paint yourself in a box
You
and
wanna
say, you
cover all
gotta
bases.
pick one of these 6.
Right.
I will
You know,
also
of
say
potential things that can happen.
that most boards ask that question, and in my experience, it's never happened.
Yay.
Okay?
Oh,
Very
Okay,
good.
that was the right
There's a
answer.
lot qualified.
Yeah, that's what we want to hear.
The right answer.
Now I'm just gonna do this real quick.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes. Right.
Okay, so,
So I did have a question
Yes,
for the
please.
board. So I am supposed to be at
Oh, that's right.
Oregon School Personnel Association training Monday
forgot.
and Tuesday in Lincoln City. And so I wanted to ask, the level of involvement that you wanted me to participate in this, so that I can make adjustments to that schedule. So it's pretty, I think it's pretty much 8 to 5 on Monday, and it's like 8 to 2 on Tuesday. So
Seaside, is that what you said?
Lincoln City.
Oh, Lincoln City.
So
Oh,
Still a
about
drive.
It's a
still a drive.
It's about an hour and a
Yeah.
half.
So yes,
It
an hour
is.
and a half. So
He can call in if that's okay with
That's
all of
would be
you.
fine, if
Um,
you felt comfortable.
I mean,
What do you
The idea-
Yeah, what do you want? 'Cause
What
I-
do you
Yeah,
think?
well, I mean, the idea of calling in for 6 hours doesn't
Doesn't appeal.
You
sound
don't wanna
awesome.
listen to us eat dinner?
Right, yeah, so, well, okay, so,
How? Well,
I really trust, you know, I want to provide whatever support, insight, perspective that I can provide you.
Yeah.
But I also feel like we have really solid candidates that we've looked at, and I do feel like you will make a great decision that I would definitely be able to, I guess, live with. So I'm not feeling like, yes, I have to be there. But I also, if you want my input, then, and you say, we want you there, does that make sense?
Yes,
Does.
it does.
So what is the level of priority of the Lincoln City Conference? Like how do you feel about that, considering where you're at right now?
Well, I think when this whole process is done, I think I will definitely value that experience down in Lincoln City, learning personnel ropes and things like that.
See,
So I think
yeah.
long-term, that's a pretty good investment of my time to do that. You know, it's kind of one of those things, we're pressing right now, sure, I wanna be here and do this work that's super important, but I do think that I will gain a lot from being there.
Because it'll be a year before you could do it again.
Correct,
Yeah.
Now,
correct.
would you be comfortable then, like, if you were able to phone in maybe at the end of Monday and talk to us on the phone about how things look, we can give you kind of an update how Monday went, and then maybe include you on the phone in deliberation?
No.
Oh, you can't
He's
do
gotta
that?
be there.
He can't, yeah, you can't
You can't
share
do
with
that.
him what happened in executive session.
Oh,
And,
Thank you.
And he does,
At that point, I
the
wouldn't
deliberation
wanna weigh in
should really be
and,
more
yeah,
of the board.
okay.
What Dan's role would be, and my recommendation is if he's able to listen to an interview, he can provide feedback at the end with the screening committee, and he can do that over the phone. If there's, if you are only able to call in for one interview and you provide feedback for that one interview, if you can do two, then you do two, and if you do none, then you do none.
Right.
That's how I think.
I'm
it
comfortable
would
with
work.
that.
I'm
Yeah.
comfortable with
Yeah,
that too.
I'm comfortable with whatever, Dan. I would value your insight and perspective. I would like to have you here, but it's your call.
Okay.
I would
Thank
like
you,
you here,
Sarah.
but
Yeah, of course,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm
And
here.
Right.
I agree with that urgent versus important
mm-hmm,
kind of
Absolutely.
thing,
Right.
that what you're doing is pretty important over there in
Right.
Lincoln
Right.
City.
yes.
I'm gonna do something I wasn't planning to do, but I'm gonna crack this door open just briefly. So we've got a really aggressive schedule. Is it OSBA that can't possibly change it? We've got people that aren't gonna make these dates that are on the board. Herb's out, Shelley's out, Dan's out. These are two board members and our assistant super can't make the interviews or then participate in deliberation is important to me. So what I'm asking is, and I know summer is insane probably for everybody, but what options are on the table? Should we elect or consider different dates, or is that even
Okay.
possible?
No, it is possible, but it all depends on how late in the summer you're willing to have your
Right.
interim superintendent.
I
start.
get the value of
So,
getting it done.
that's really typically the limiting factor.
Right.
So if you want to look at having different interview dates, we can do that. And then just know you would want, I would say, a minimum of 4 days to do contract negotiations following the interviews once you've identified a top candidate, and then kind of schedule that meeting to vote on approving the contract. So
And also something to notice is that we have contract negotiations with SFEA the next week.
Oh, wow.
So we have,
And the
It's
summer
getting
board
busier.
training in August.
It's really getting busier, isn't it?
Which,
Things are starting to mount.
again, at some point, something
can
has
put that back
to
to
give
September.
possibly, right?
I mean, can we push
Yeah,
it off
we
a couple
can make
days just at
something
the end of the
work, yeah.
week?
Well, my whole point was, so here, I'll give you just my own personal snapshot for what it's worth.
Yeah.
I am gone starting tomorrow morning at 5 until Sunday night. I'm back literally for 2 days. We leave Wednesday for the hills. We got a camping trip with a bunch of family for the whole rest and through the end of that weekend, right? I mean, so this is a crazy 2-day window for me to slide this into, just personally, right?
Certainly.
Other people are gone entirely. I would, if we were gonna even consider it, I would be looking at then that whole following week, would be my
Following the whole
suggestion.
week, you're talking all
And I don't even know if that solves a problem for you, right? I mean,
So
Right,
like the
so
5th, 6th of August? Is that what
So-
you're thinking?
What date?
I
I'm
just need
floating
to,
ideas.
I need to mention something. I'm having a very serious family crisis back in Nebraska that I might have to leave immediately.
Okay.
I don't know when, but when it happens, I have to be on a plane.
Right.
So, my whole family. So, I'll do my very best to be at everything that I can, for sure. But I have to put that out there too.
Right.
And I have to go. So,
Of course,
Yeah.
yes. And you should, family
Yeah.
family.
You should,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, just letting you all know that ahead of time.
So don't necessarily count you in on any date because you might be gone no matter
Right,
what.
I could be.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
it's a very tragic situation.
So
So
moving
sorry.
it, so moving it to next week, would that solve your problem, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Except for
But
Tuesday.
Jonathan.
Well, so Monday the 5th,
Would
we
solve
have
my
negotiations,
Oh,
so Monday
so
the 5th.
just-
Well,
we
I don't
have
have a problem with
The
these two.
6th and 7th, we have
Other than-
admin, but I could step myself out of that.
So the 6th and 7th,
I could make work. I could make the rest, I could make the 6th, 7th, or 8th work. I can't make, we've got negotiations on the 5th and I am not available on the 9th.
I can make the 6th and 7th work.
I'm not available on the 7th, 8th, or 9th.
oh,
Okay.
so that doesn't
Steve
help.
and I
There
are
we go.
both
Doesn't help.
out of the state for a conference on the 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Okay, so I don't think we can change it.
Yeah, so 5th and 6th then, because 5th is bargaining.
Negotiations. Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't even gonna crack the door open. I think,
No,
I'm glad I cracked
I think
it,
it was a
but
good
It was a
Now
good
you
try.
know.
I mean, it was a good
I'm glad
idea,
you
it was a
did.
good try, and you
Well,
never know
that
until
needed
you
to be
look at
talked
it.
about.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah,
you,
and pushing it to the following week just
No,
delays
that's-
it out way too
that's-
much.
then we're too far.
Yeah.
I
Then we're
think.
too far. Okay.
is
I
there
just wanted
some
to
way
ask.
we can do Monday of next week and then go to the next week to finish up? Or is
It's a
that
long
spreading,
time
it's
between,
still?
yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
I think it
prefer
needs to be
that.
back
And you
to
don't
that.
want
Because
that,
then
okay.
and it gets a little trickier in your mind trying to
Right.
compare
Oh,
and contrast
okay.
candidates when
Yep.
you put that much time in
Okay.
between
Sure.
the interviews.
Right.
Spike it.
Okay, so we're locked in on our days and
I
our
think,
times.
I think this is what we're gonna do.
Yep.
Okay, and Janet, Jennifer, and Lori have their reference candidates assignments.
Yep.
You've got your interview question assignments. I will email it again with more explicit instructions of how to reply to me. I will email you the the telephone reference check instructions, if you will. I will communicate with the candidates regarding interviews, and we will all get to work. All
I
right.
really appreciate
Oh,
your
thank you.
facilitation through this
Yes,
process.
of
Yeah.
course. It's
This has been-
fun for Steve and I. You know, we don't have to do as much of the hard work as you guys do, but we very much enjoy it. So, and I've loved working with your board. So it's been great. So then I think the last thing we've got is continued conversation on your contract.
Right.
Yes. And so feel free.
Okay, well, it took me until today to get a hold of Lisa. So when we last spoke, we talked about a number of the things in the contract. We walked through each section, wrote down some notes. I promised I would get back with Lisa on a few things. I did that this morning and was able to put together what I'm gonna call a draft of the contract. And there's still a number of to be determined, including dates and salaries and some of the pronoun usage, etc. The key items, though, I think that I would want to talk to are going to show up in red, right? So this is got changes on in Word, and so you can look and see what we did. I would be happy to go through it with you, or I would be happy if you guys wanted to just look at it and bring up ideas. I'm very familiar with it, because I authored it, so, but I'd be happy to entertain however you'd like to proceed with regard to reviewing or providing feedback on this.
I just kind of have a simple thing. When we went to the OSBA Summer Board Conference this weekend, I sat in on the superintendent evaluation table, and one of the things that I was reminded of there is that, and this was Steve, he said, most evaluations happen in like March or April, or March, I think he said, and that's different than what
Yes.
we've been doing and that what's in the contract. So
Right.
I wanted to bring that up, just in case we want to switch it to what most other people do. I don't know what the rationale is. But he definitely said most people do that, most districts do that, so I wanted to put that out there.
And if it's not something that you guys really wanna get into for this contract because it's the interim, you can always have that conversation later in terms of preparation for a permanent contract.
Okay.
Well, but my question then is like, what if that person, whoever we choose, puts their hat in the ring? Is it better for us to do that? Well,
Well,
I guess
it
it doesn't
says-
matter.
The way it's worded, it says no later than June 1, does it not preclude us by this contract with doing it in March, or?
Okay,
Right.
okay, all right.
So
There
but
we
I
go.
did move it up, because it did say July 1, which technically is literally at the very end of the contract. I did move it up a full month from previous wording, for that, sort of that same purpose, the idea being, but I'd be fine even moving it further. I did, to Sarah's point, think that if we were gonna overhaul the whole section based on OSBA guidance, I was just gonna suggest we wait for the permanent contract. This is an interim. I wasn't
Okay,
Yeah.
thinking we should spend that time now.
sounds
I
good.
think that's.
Yep, and that is maybe something too that we put on our plates, with the new contract, with the permanent contract and then the evaluation process. I know that we probably want to get really clear
Yeah.
about what we expect in evaluation before we offer that permanent
Right.
contract. So I don't know if we want to start thinking about having a point person on that, because it seems like that work would be most efficient if it was a subset of not all of us talking about it at the same.
I would tend to agree, yeah.
A couple of things I would add to that. One would be that I think doing it in that timeline, in the March timeline is, my recommendation would be that you look to do that regardless for a couple reasons. One is I think you're gonna do your permanent search far before then.
Yes.
You should have your permanent search done by then.
Right.
Yes.
And I think that also doing it in March with the interim, whether if they're not your permanent person, is gonna be good practice for you.
Okay.
You're gonna have practice going through that process with somebody.
Right.
And if they, for whatever reason, become your permanent person, then that's gonna be great feedback for them for the following year.
Right.
So I would recommend doing it in March. And like you said, the contract language here doesn't really matter, it just says you have to get it done by this date.
Yeah.
Right. It was sort of a get out of jail free. And
Yes, it is.
we run into,
Tie your
for
hands.
whatever
Yeah.
reason, we are limited
Right.
to get it done.
And we
Yeah.
did 2 years ago, we were pushing up against that deadline, so.
We were.
Well, and I think that's why March becomes a really good time, because the
It
end of the
does.
school year becomes busier. And I think also I think giving feedback to people earlier in a school
Yes.
year allows
Yeah.
them opportunity to, if there was areas of growth, they have 2 months
Right.
to really try to say, I'm gonna show you that I can do better in these areas. So-
Agreed.
I personally think
Agreed.
it's important to have more frequent discussions with the
Yeah.
superintendent than I think we probably historically had.
Yeah.
Right.
I did leave in the at least one time, but again, just sort of to keep the contract language at a minimum does not preclude us from, I think, engaging in better practices.
Yeah, and Steve did mention that too, that 3 or 4 is
Right.
really
Yeah, no, that
a
seems
better,
to be
a better
guidance, yeah.
number.
Right.
Right,
And so when the evaluation, when we start looking at different evaluations, OSBA can guide us through that and what we
Yes.
want
Yes.
to.
We have a
Wonderful,
tool and we can
wonderful.
also facilitate the process for you. With
Wonderful.
with your permanent search, you get the transition program, which is 6 to 12 hours of professional development. really tailored to your specific needs as a district, as a board, and really helps to foster and cultivate that relationship between the new superintendent and the board. And one of the things that we go over is, how are you going to evaluate? When are you going to have these check-ins and these, discussions about how everything is going? And so
Right.
Superb.
we help you out through all of that, and you get it with the search essentially. So
Very good.
yes,
That's a great program.
And I know this is premature, but I don't want to forget, so I'll put it out there now and then we'll revisit it when we hire a permanent, is I did hear from OSBA over the weekend that rolling 3-year, while common, is not recommended. So just for us to kind of keep in mind as we move forward, that it may have been something we did in the past, we may want to think through whether we are
Right.
wanting to do that again.
Right.
And so was there an alternate proposed?
That it would be, well, I guess it would just be 3 years, and at the 3-year mark, you would evaluate, because they were just saying that you're always then looking at a 3-year contract, and so if
Right.
you ever get into an issue where you do need to, or you desire to move on from that particular person, you're now having to pay out 3 years or 2 years instead of the remainder of 1 year, or something like that. It just, they said it was common practice, but
Yeah.
this individual anyway, who was leading the seminar, said wouldn't recommend it.
Okay,
Just something to keep in mind.
news.
Good to know.
Not good news, but good.
Very good.
Right, and I'll share also that, well, I was talking with Lisa about this when she wasn't worried about this contract, but she did give us, she says sort of, I'll plant a bug in your kind of, she says it is her guidance, personal guidance to us, that we, rather than have the just cause language under the termination, that we instead have essentially a buyout clause, which basically states that, 4 months, 6 months, whatever the amount negotiated contractually with the superintendent is, that be it. But what it does is it eliminates a lot of the other wrangling that can occur contractually.
The arguing
Yeah.
about the just clause.
Right.
The argument,
Right,
yeah.
right.
You just
So-
say, we're just exercising this option,
Yeah.
and we're done.
And we're gonna do it.
So I'll just
Efficient. Yeah.
tossing that again, similar to what you're doing,
Yeah.
tossing out an idea for the future. It doesn't, I wasn't thinking we'd consider that here.
No. Just, yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Boy, that's an excellent point.
Again, other sections people want to talk about, I could, just very briefly, there were a few questions that we had, maybe that's what I'll start with, because some of these things didn't change. So we had some question on the second paragraph of section 2. Her recommendation was that was all very standard, expected language from any potential superintendent, and she, after reading it, felt that it was perfectly reasonable, and so I left it as well.
D? Is
No, I'm
that-
talking about
Two, the second
paragraph B, or
Oh.
paragraph 2, whatever, the second paragraph.
Duties and responsibilities.
Duties and
Oh, yes,
responsibility,
okay,
complaints
thank you.
shall be referred, remember that conversation?
Yes.
Yes.
Her recommendation was that that's very standard, and any superintendent who
Okay.
doesn't see that may be very cautious. So I went ahead and left it
Okay.
as was.
Okay.
The tax sheltered annuity, also completely common. She may even add a section when she does the final review of this, by the way, which is that she says if we do choose to do something with the tax sheltered annuity, which is common, that she would put some kind of wording in there to indicate it is incumbent upon the superintendent to make sure they fall within Oregon state law regarding their contributions, not incumbent upon the district to make sure
Okay.
that they are doing
Very
it.
good.
That's a significant change.
But I didn't add all that wording, that was kind of legalese, and I thought she could if she felt
Yeah.
that was pertinent.
Okay.
She recommended that we find a way to prorate vacation days. She recommended that both for this contract and for any permanent contract.
Really?
That way we are not, as it was written, should we terminate for any reason, we owe them the entire vacation bank as outlined in the contract. Whereas she recommends prorating it.
Right.
So that, and I wrote in here, and I'm open to suggestions here, I wrote in here at a monthly rate of 2 days per month, which was literally 1 day less than what was in there at 25 days under the previous contract.
So 24 days.
This would be 24, at a rate of 24 per year,
Right.
to be accrued monthly based on the length of this contract, which we don't even know when it's gonna start, so I
Right.
felt that
Right.
seemed reasonable.
Do they roll over?
Not this one,
no.
right? Because this is interim.
That this is an interim which ends,
Oh,
but
I see.
I think,
Right, so that's not relevant then, yeah.
I don't know that it said anything in the previous one, and I don't think, that's a good question. I don't remember seeing anything
I
in
don't
this
think
one
it,
about it.
I don't think, I don't remember the language in there.
And if it's not here, it doesn't roll over, so.
Yeah.
So I would say the answer is no.
Okay.
Okay, section 3D will be entirely written or drafted by Lisa on our behalf, probably based on whether the individual is a PERS retiree
Retired.
or if they are not, because
Right.
there's a whole bunch of legalese in here about PERS contributions and
Yeah.
the 6% pickup, and all of that's dependent on certain Oregon laws, and some of which are brand new and changing, and
Yeah,
So-
that's,
And they're still not solved.
so, but that whole section,
Yeah.
I grayed out and just said she's going to draft that,
Okay.
and I left
Okay.
it unchanged.
Mm-hmm,
We struck meritorious service per our conversation
right.
before. Some of the other is just some minor changes, mostly because it's an interim
Mm-hmm.
superintendent. I won't go through them all. I cleaned up some wording issues in section 5.
Mm-hmm.
Renewal, this one's important. This contract is non-renewable. The interim superintendent may, at his or her discretion, apply for the permanent superintendent position, which is to be filled the following year, or for the following.
Yeah.
So, the- there was all that wording about renewing, and like, this contract is, it ends,
It ends.
and
Yes.
that's it.
That's
So,
right, yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Oh, and then the other one, this again was Lisa's recommendation. The terminate, remember we had a conversation about termination.
Did.
What does that mean? The April 15th date seems strange for an interim. I mean, they're gonna be done at the end of June no matter what. So,
Right.
anyway, she's recommended that we just simply give a 60-day written notice requirement for the super. Should they choose, for whatever reason, to try to, exit the arrangement, 60 days, she thought seemed reasonable. That was in compliance with, I think, some Oregon statute that she quoted that I don't know off the top of my head.
It's okay.
I think that's the crux of the
Yeah.
changes.
There you go.
Made.
Very
Thank
good.
you, Jonathan,
Right.
that's
Thank
great.
you very much for
Feels-
doing that.
Yeah, it feels a lot cleaner
It does.
it does.
and more appropriate for what we're trying to do, so.
Thank you.
Well, thanks. If
Thank you
you guys
very
have any
much.
other questions, email me,
Okay.
Yeah,
just me.
okay.
And we'll, now that we've had this conversation, I will send this to Lisa for her to have and review. But the final changes, what will likely happen is, once we have identified and verbally negotiated with a superintendent, that information will be given to her. She will fill in all the final information and give it to us, blessed by her already, at which point we will have already had legal review when it comes to the board in open session for a
Right.
vote.
Oh,
Okay. Very
And
good.
I would recommend that you don't vote on it until you've had the candidate sign it.
Got it. Good
Yes.
point. Good to know. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other concerns about the contract?
Nope.
Okay, that was it for discussion items, and I think we're going to adjourn the meeting.